Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Mwar Mokurukuru.
Mwar Mokurukuru.
Mwar Mokurukuru.
Mwar Mokurukuru.
Mwar Mokurukuru.
Mwar Mokurukuru.
Zai Muzumukuru.
Zai Muzumukuru.
Zai Muzumukuru.
Zai Muzumukuru.
Zai Muzumukuru. Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Prayer of the word, Regai, Masi, and did not Taura, Nepungwa, Zemuyu Mangu, Zinzikwe Nebimwari. May the words of our mouths and meditation of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O Jah of our creation. Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Mari Kumburi Rai Africa. Ngai Simuzire Zitrayo. Nzwa imitero yedu isumuri yayo itumuri yako uyamuya kumborere uyamuya musbene isumuri yayo itumuri yako Tendai Mari.
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 Thanks and praise unto Mari Nyakusika, God, the creator of the universe, through Muzimu Mukuru, our great ancestors. As Brother Olatunji quite rightly said, in all important gatherings, in our African tradition, it is customary and traditional that we pour libation to Muzimu Mukuru, our great ancestors. We therefore invoke the spirits of Muzimu Mukuru, our great ancestors, in remembrance of their great legacy and in thanksgiving for the life they have given us, the knowledge they have given us, the guidance they have given us. Let us assume a posture of reverence. We pour libation unto Muzimu Mukuru, our great ancestors, as the medium, the natural connection between ourselves here on earth and the divine creator of the universe. So let us incline our ears, our hearts, lift our spirits as we pour libation to open our Black History Month. Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Father Heaven, Mother Earth, Muzimu Mukuru, great ancestors. Mwari tupio masimba, ekukura tukaipa. Mwari tupio masimba, ekukura tukaipa. Tendai Mari. Tendai Mari. Tendai Mari. Mwa yakashata ngai be matire. Yakashata ngai be matire. Yakashata ngai be matire.
Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
By the power of our ritual, by the power of the word, by the sound of the drum, we command that all that is of evil, leave us, leave us, leave us, evil spirit, leave us, leave us. Hey, yeah, 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 yeah. Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari.
Unto Muzimu Mukuru, the great ancestors, we come. Unto Muzimu Mukuru, the great ancestors, we come. Unto Muzimu Mukuru, the great ancestors, we come. We call upon Muzimu Mukuru, the great ancestors, in the tongue of Muzimu Mukuru, the great ancestors. Yeah, we call upon Muzimu Mukuru, the great ancestors, in the tongue of Muzimu Mukuru, the great ancestors. Muzimu Mukuru, yeah, Kebulan, uyai. Mukuru, yeah, Kebulan, uyai. Kebulan, uyai, mama. Uyai mama, uyai kipeyo Simba, uyai kipeyo Zibo, uyai kipeyo Kushinga, uyai kipeyo Jukumbarero, uyai, Great ancestor of Mama Africa, come, come. Great ancestor of Mama Africa, come. Great ancestor of Mama Africa, come. Call you from the east, call you from the west, call you from the north, call you from the south, from around the circumferences of the globe, from the height of Mount Kilimanjaro, and all the mountains of Mama Africa, to the depth of the river Nile, and all the waters of Mama Africa. Here we call you from the shores of Mama Africa, Asia, Europe, the Caribbean, North and South America, the isles of the Pacific. Here we call you. Come. Here Call upon Mukuru, our great ancestors, those ancient ones and those recently passed, pioneers of culture and civilization, those who gave science, technology, mathematics, mythology, archaeology, architecture, astrology, astronomy, language and communication, philosophy, religion, medicine to the world. We call upon Mukuru, the great ancestors, those warriors who died in the cause of our liberation, who lived their lives and gave their lives so we could have a better life here. We forget them. Uyai, heal them. Call upon the prophets of healing from Baba Imo's Step to Baba Sali and beyond. Uyai. Call upon the great mothers of our history. Uyai. Call upon Hatshepsut, Mbuyane Yasantewa. We call upon Queen Afrika Bantu. Mama, Queen Mother, Queen Amy Ashwood Garvey. We call upon the King Babas of our history. We call upon the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Papa Omowale Malcolm X, Edan Kimati, Kazulu, call upon Thomas Sankara, Uyai. Special libation to our beloved sister Nkechi Ode, For this libation, we humbly ask of our ancestors to accept our sincere offerings in remembrance to them. We call upon Mukuru to bless this occasion, bless this season of Black History Month, bless the institution of Black History Month, bless our speaker for today, so that he may inspire and enlighten us as we strive for knowledge and wisdom to empower us in the fight for our total liberation. May this season of Black History Month raise our consciousness, deepen our commitment, strengthen us in courage as we go forward. May it inspire greater discipline in us, vision, as we strive for in the total liberation of our land and people, the glory of Mutumu Mukuru, the great ancestors, and the attainment of a much higher quality of African human existence. Through the ancestors, we go on to the deities of Mama Africa. Tipeyi Wachukumborero, give us your blessings. The Orisha, the Abyssum, to the Neteru, to the Vodon, give us your blessings. Unto the creator of the entire universe, we come through the spirits of Muzimu Mukuru and through the deities of Mama Africa. Bless us, empower us in all that we do. Tenaimware, Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. Tenaimware, on behalf of the gathered strong, I commune with Mzimu Mukuru, our great ancestors. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari.
Let us make a joyful noise as we conclude our libation, beloved brothers and sisters. Let us heal our ancestors. Let us heal the deities of Mama Africa. Let us heal Mzimu Mukuru. Let us heal Mwari Nyakusika, the creator of the universe, for making us African and giving us a glorious, wonderful history to celebrate and commemorate. Heal them!
Heal them.
Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari.
Okay. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari.
Tendai, give thanks, Brother Leader, for that libation, that most fitting and appropriate way to proceed with the Lion Story Black History Month season. We're going to go straight into our presentation without further ado from our young Lion brother Shakura. To paraphrase the MC Rob Bass, he is internationally known and he's known to not rock the microphone. He's a young brother who spent his life on Liberation Road, raised on Liberation Road, embedded and grounded on Liberation Road. We've seen the fruits of that grounding, that groundation with pretty much everything that he does. He brings insight, he brings depth, and he brings power to every presentation. As well as being a proud member of the Keblan Biblist movement, he's also the CEO of a very powerful, important media institution, Got Kush TV. And he's making, as a young brother who, in a way and a manner of a true Pan-Africanist, is making us international links. So give thanks and praise, sister and brother. So give it up and hail our speaker for this evening, Brother Tafadwa Shakura Bandaka. Let's hail him, sisters and brothers.
Sorry, Brother Latunji, is Prince Carl with us?
Hello, Siba.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna have Prince Carl before that?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, all right. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai
Before that,
Mwari.
sisters and brothers, again, which is a intergenerational process, because if we don't include our young people in what we do in our vibrations, then actually we have no future. So on that note, we're going to bring one of our warriors in training who are rearing for warriorhood and manhood in a true African sense of the word, our Prince Carl. Prince, step forward and come and deliver to your community. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari. Yeah.
Tendai
Mwari.
I was told to read Frederick Douglass's speech. It's called "Power Concedes Nothing Without a Demand." If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are men who want crops without ploughing up the grounds. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. This struggle may be a moral or it may be a physical one. It may be both moral and physical, and it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will. Word. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact measures of injustice and the wrong which will be imposed upon them. And they will continue till they are resisted, and with either words or blows, or with both. The limits of tyrants and prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress.
All right. Ilip.
Can't hear you, Brother Olatunji.
Let me unmute myself. Yeah, Tendai Mwari, give thanks, Prince Carl. This is the example of what we need to do. This is Prince Carl is a product of the Keblan Academy of Excellence, our Amanda Day School. Just on a quick note, sisters and brothers, to support your local Amanda Day School. If you do not know where your local school is, go to NAB's website, National Association of Black Supplementary Schools. Without further ado, going to hand over to our brother, Shakura, for Black History Month is dead. Brother Shakura, take it away.
And I want to give thanks to Tunji, give him thanks to Brother Leader for the libation, giving thanks to the Al-Kebalan Revivalist movement for the beautiful institution of the Al-Kebalan Academy of Excellence. I'm going to move very swiftly because I have to get through a presentation that is well over an hour in the space of an hour. Yeah. So we're gonna go quickly, cut some things, and hopefully maybe we can come back to some of it in the discussion and the Q&A. But I do hope ones and ones get something from it. Now, can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
We can.
So the presentation is entitled "Black History Month is Dead," which sounds like a statement, but it's actually a question. And it comes out of a presentation that was actually developed by Brother Leader in relation to the history of Black History Month and detailing it, because we understood that it is a history that is often obscure, yes? And we know that it's obscure based upon a lot of the questions that people ask, all the statements that they made every time Black History Month comes around. And so coming out of that presentation, because it fell upon me to deliver this presentation a few times, and so the developing on it, I thought, well, let me look at it, especially in relation to working in colleges and schools and universities. Let me look at it in terms of us as a people and as a generation of young Africans in this country, and what it says in terms of our approach. What our approach to Black History Month says about how we see ourselves as African people, our identity, and whether or not we understand the true value of history. Yeah. And so that's the whole point of this developing this presentation out of the presentation, the history of Black History Month. So a lot of the content is the same, but some of the emphasis is different, and we go somewhere else nearer the conclusion. Yeah. So we know that there is an issue with this thing called Black History Month, because again, some of the statements that are made are rather interesting. And so we start by looking at some key questions. Yeah. Excuse me, 1 second. Sorry. We've got a bit of an issue here. Hold on. Right. So one of the major questions that is asked every Black History Month is, why do we, yes, as African people, allow them to give us a month to celebrate our history? Yes. Why do we allow them to give us a month to celebrate our history? And obviously this question comes with a particular premise. And so today we're going to explore whether the premise implicit in this question is actually true, is actually factual, is actually relative to the history of the actual celebration of Black History Month. Then is Black History Month about celebrating African American achievements? Yeah. Now I heard this one in relation to the idea that brothers and sisters in Jamaica, yes, or majority Black nations don't really need a Black History Month because they already know their history. Yeah. And it's a Black American thing. Yeah, them need it because them grow in an environment full up of white people and white racism, and it's only relevant to those kinds of people. Yeah, and then how does Black History Month affect Black identity? Yes, all right. Is there a relationship between the concept of Black History Month and how we see ourselves as African people, particularly in Britain? Yeah, and finally, what is the proper use of history? Okay, so that's a question that we're also going to be looking into today. All right, so moving forward, as always, when getting into these things, we have to begin by asking the question, well, what is history? Yeah, if we're here to look at history and there's Black History Month, what is history? The picture in the background is the Great Mosque of Djenné, which was a monument, sorry, still existing, but built in the Mali Empire, kings and queens. And we can never mention Mali and Songhai without mentioning Ouagadougou, yes, aka Ghana. Yeah, we must talk about Ouagadougou, because if there was no Ouagadougou, there would be no Mali and Songhai. Yeah, and so that's why I made that emphatically clear. More on that later on, if time permits. All right. So history is the study as defined by the authority on all things semantical when it comes to the English language, the Oxford Dictionary, kings and queens, the study of past events, particularly in human affairs. Yes, history is a study of past events, particularly in human affairs. Okay, So, you know, we get that the use of this word past, yes, events, particularly in human affairs. And we have the whole history of past events connected with a particular person or thing. Yeah, so all of us as individuals have a history and things in our environment, like, for example, the London bus. Yeah, London bus has a history, and there are museums that you go to in this country where you can learn the history of the development of the London bus. Yeah, and then finally, as far as the authority of Oxford is concerned, history is the continuous, typically chronological record of important or public events or of a particular trend or institution. An example of this would be the history of reggae music. Yeah, the history of reggae music. Yeah, particular trend or institution. The history of parliamentary democracy. Yes, is another one. Okay, and having said that, the history of reggae music, I do want to send love to my brother Suleiman Lee. Yeah, who is the son of the recently departed Bunny Lee. Yeah, the reggae producer, legendary reggae producer. And you know, we've had a complicated history, or he's had a complicated history. But I know that brother Suleiman is in mourning at the moment. Yeah, because he had developed some level of a relationship with his father. And so we just want to make sure that we send our love and our prayers to my brother Suleiman at this time, giving thanks for life, kings and queens. All right. So, but that is not sufficient for us as African people, because we are African people, and European or Eurocentric definitions are often inadequate for contextualizing our African reality. And so we want to begin also by giving some African-centered definitions of history. We're going to start with one of my teachers, the Black history man himself, the author of the illustrious When We Ruled, yeah, brother Robin Walker. You can see him pictured here holding two of his books, the Black Musical Tradition and Black Literature, as well as Black History Matters, a textbook that he put together for children, charting great achievements in Black history from ancient Kemet up until the present day kings and queens. All right, and he says that history in its broadest sense contains all knowledge not acquired in the present. Yeah. So immediately we broaden the scope, yeah, of history. We understand, therefore, that history has an impact and affects everything in our present reality. Yeah. And more specifically, we can look at it in terms of subjects that we study formally in the education system. Yeah. In that, all of the subjects that we study, all of the disciplines that we study at every level of study are really the accumulated knowledge of that discipline up until now. But not only is it the accumulated knowledge of that discipline up until now, it is often the accumulated knowledge of that discipline as associated with specific groups of people. Yes, one of the things, so we can look at some examples of this, and the one that I was raised with is the idea of Pythagoras' theorem. Who is Pythagoras, and why is the theorem his? The theorem is his because the people that define it as Pythagoras' theorem see Greek civilization as important to them. It is their classical civilization, and Pythagoras was the person who introduced this theorem into the European world. Yes, so during the Renaissance period, yeah, where Europe, after coming out of the so-called Dark Ages, was looking for a cultural center, they went back to Greece and Rome. Yes, and brought Pythagoras forward and named a theorem after him. We could do the same with Newton's laws, yeah, of motion, yeah. But in fact, kings and queens, yeah, bearing in mind, we can do this with the study of history in general, in the sense of the fact that periodization in the formal study of history is often told according to whatever stage of development Europe was at a particular time. Yeah. For example, the medieval period, yeah, in European history is what? Like from around what? The 11 to the 1400s, the 1500s. Yeah, they call that the medieval period. Yeah. And we, in studying African history, tend to use terms like medieval Africa. Yes. But medieval is a word that relates to the concept of being middle. Yes. In between this and that. So how do we know, and by what designation are we suggesting that the history of Africa was going through a middle period at this point in history, especially seen as our history is much older than Film history. Yes, so even the discipline of history is told according to the lens through which Europeans see the world. Want to know another example? We are currently in the year 2020 what? AD. Yeah, after the birth of a character in history that is important to European history called Christ. And everything before that is BC. When really and truly, our ancestors have a calendar that will tell us that this is the year what? 6270? Yeah. So even our concept of time and history, which is essential to the concept of history, is told from the Eurocentric lens. Yeah. So history in its broadest sense contains all knowledge not acquired in the present. But we're gonna have to go even further than that, kings and queens, to the master teacher himself, Baba John Henry Clark, who tells us that history is a clock that a people, excuse me, 1 second, sorry. Yes, history is a clock that a people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. It is also a compass that people use to find themselves on the map of human geography. History tells a people where they have been and what they have been, where they are and what they are. And most importantly, history tells a people where they still must go and what they still must be. Let's go into the symbology here. History is a clock, basically for telling us our time of day. We know what year it is because we all collectively follow a particular calendar. And as we've already said, our current calendar is defined by the Eurocentric development of history. So actually, most of us live our lives upon European time. Yes, that is a reality. Yeah, history is also a compass that people use to find themselves on the map of human geography. Yeah, what is a compass? A compass is a piece of technology that people use, yeah, to find their direction, yeah, to understand where they are in space and chart a course for a particular journey. Okay, and so the example that I tend to use is that if I am on a ship in the Atlantic Ocean, and you are on a ship in the Pacific Ocean, and we are both trying to get to Mama Africa, is the compass that I am using sufficient, yes, for you to chart your course from the Pacific to Mama Africa? And the answer, of course, is no, which means emphasizing the fact that we must use our own compass if history is going to be valuable to us. Yes, we must understand where we are according to our group dynamics, yes, in order to be able to make proper use of history. But history tells, because history tells the people where they still must go and what they still must be. But what I like about this definition is that he relates history to the concepts of politics and culture. Yes, politics and culture, as well as human geography. Yeah, so history is a tool that has a particular function. Yes, and that function is to guide us in the present for charting a course, a direction, a journey in our future. The reason why we must extricate ourselves from the Eurocentric definition of history is that it keeps us locked in one dimension of time, and that is anti-African. Yes, Africans perceive of history as past, present, continuous. Yes, we perceive time in its 3 dimensions simultaneously. That's why we pour libation before we start the occasion, because the ancestors continue to be with us. They are present here in time. That is why. Yes, and we understand that remembrance of the ancestors charts a course for us in our future. And so, knowingly or unknowingly, and I'm sure he would have come to some understanding of this, Baba John Henry Clark realigns us with our African sense of time with this definition. Let's go forward, kings and queens. But we have to introduce now the concept of collective memory, yes? Because history, in another sense, is the collective memory, yes, of a people. All knowledge not acquired in the present, which means that we're talking about the accumulated knowledge of people, collectives of people. And this definition of memory is given by a woman by the name of Laura Lee Sherwood. Yeah, she's a scientist, all right? And she speaks of memory. She says memory is the storage of acquired knowledge for later recall. Learning and memory form the basis by which individuals adapt their behavior to their particular external circumstances. Once again, learning and memory, the ability to acquire knowledge and recall knowledge, is the basis by which individuals adapt their behavior to their particular external circumstances. Without these mechanisms, it would be impossible for individuals to plan for successful interactions and to intentionally avoid predictably disagreeable circumstances. That relates to the individual. So I ask the question, think about it for yourselves at the moment, yeah? How much of your life currently right now is based upon your understanding of history, yeah? How much of your everyday life, as you live it all the time, yeah, is based upon your current individual understanding of history? Imagine you walked out of your house today, and at some point throughout the day, you acquired amnesia. Yes? How would you function in your environment? Now, develop that question from the individual to the collective level, because in the same way that individuals have memories, collectives also have memory. In the same way that individuals can catch amnesia or be induced into a state of amnesia, so can collectives. So if what happens, how do collectives of people, if it is the case, let me say, that without memory, it would be impossible for individuals to plan for successful interactions and to intentionally avoid predictably disagreeable circumstances, it stands to reason that the same would apply for collectives. That collectives, without the mechanism of collective memory, it would be impossible for them to plan for successful interactions and to intentionally avoid predictably disagreeable circumstances. Yes? Let's move forward. So we learned, kings and queens, that there's a place on the planet Earth called Africa. Yes? And this place called Africa, for a good significant part of history, was referred to as the Dark Continent, the continent of darkness, savagery, barbarity. The people them there never did anything, created anything. And you'd be surprised, brothers and sisters, the extent to which this idea still persists in life, yeah, in the world in which we live, even among Africans. I've had some very interesting conversations with brothers and sisters who are from the Horn of Africa recently. And one brother made it clear. He said, other than Egypt, Nubia, and Ethiopia, the rest of Africa has nothing significant to show in terms of culture and civilization. This is an African reportedly from Ethiopia who made this statement. Yeah? Bear that in mind. Yeah? And so consequently, we were taught that Africa never had anything until we interacted with Europeans or Semites, yes, who brought us light. Yeah? We've got Africans running around today trying to prove that we are the original Hebrews, yeah, and not African, because somebody has given us an idea of prestige as associated with the Hebrew line, and an idea of degradation as it associated with the African line. But how was this made possible? Yeah, when we understand that before there was any history, there was Black history, and we know this because the monuments are still around. Before some of these monuments were built, nothing else in the world was going on anywhere else in the world. Well, you see before you the Her Aket, yeah, and behind the Her Aket you see the Great Sphinx, yeah, all of which was built during or prior to the Old Kingdom Kemet, right? Between the first and the third or the fifth dynasties in Kemet. Sorry, I just had a bit of a bump. I'm just checking that my son is okay. All right. Right, kings and queens. So we know this already. So how does it come to be with the illustrious history that we have? How do we come to be collectively existing in a state of cultural and collective amnesia with the idea that Africa is a dark continent? Yeah, as opposed to being the birthplace of humanity and the cradle of civilization. We're going to turn to the great and illustrious book When We Rule for the answer to this question. Brother Robert Walker tells us, the reader may well wonder why none of this information is uncommon. Sorry, why none of this information is uncommon knowledge today, but in 1871 and 1907, most of it was in the mainstream. While the above is a small sample of the literature that is out there, it is sufficient to demonstrate that what now masquerades as world history is largely fictitious. The key issue is that in 1871, only Europeans would have been reading this material concerning our great and illustrious history. It was for their eyes only. The current make-believe histories that locate Europeans or Mediterraneans as the founders of civilization itself was fabricated over the last 100 years. This time, however, the material was aimed at a world readership. To pull this off, European scholars had to forget or pretend to forget all they previously knew about Africans and their history. By the year 1900, European control over the world by colonial conquest was almost complete. In addition, they seized control over the media and educational institutions, systems of the world. Therefore, what the world learned about itself came from or through a European source. Consequently, only stereotypes of non-whites were ever going to escape the censorship. In the case of the Far East Asians, no scholarship ever located them as the original founders of civilization itself. The mainstream could therefore tolerate Chinese history since it did not clash with the 20th century fabrication that Europeans were the original founders of civilization. The mainstream could not, however, tolerate Black history. Thus, it became important for propagandists, aka historians, to deny that the above literature exists. And when he says the above literature, he's talking about primary documented resources in relation to coming from the Greeks, coming from the Romans, coming from the Persians, coming from the people of Kemet and the Nile Valley themselves, coming from the Arabs, attesting to the greatness and the vitality of African civilization of yore. If not, they deny that the terms like Ethiopians, Libyans, Kushite, Hamites, Moors, Zanj, and Sudanese refer to Negroes, unless, of course, such people were captured slaves. If that failed, the mainstream bitterly attacked the credibility of the ancient and modern scholars. This was not entirely satisfactory. This was not an entirely satisfactory approach, since European historical scholarship is itself built upon the foundations laid by Herodotus, Devoney, Dupuis, Sir William Jones, Champollion, Rawlinson, and Darwin. To attack these scholars was therefore the equivalent of scoring an own goal. The point here being, brothers and sisters, is that we as a people were taken through a process called the maafa, invasion, conquest, enslavement, colonization and neo-colonization currently of African people. And throughout that process, we were ripped from a knowledge of ourselves and our history. And the sensibility developed among Europeans increasingly to not only shut us off from a knowledge of that history, but to fabricate the history itself and institutionalize it in systems of education, systems of formal research, institutions of science, and give it out to the world, institutions of media and mass media production like Hollywood, and give it out to the world. Consequently, because we were brought up in that oppressive experience, we did not have a self-generating means, or we lost, or our self-generating means for transferring our history was severely retarded. Today, brothers and sisters, I'm having conversations with people online about whether we can justifiably say that European culture is superior to African culture. Objectively. Why? Because they won. And are dominating us currently and have been for the last 500 years. And it's very difficult to get people to understand that once we accept their cultural superiority as an organic fact, we lose. It's very difficult to get people to understand that. It's very difficult to get people to understand the difference between cultural superiority and present day domination. Yes, being in the power position does not make your culture organically superior. It just means that you may have had superior weaponry at a particular point in time. It may also mean that your culture has been degraded, that you're not actually living your culture. And so the superior or equal benefits of your culture are not made manifest to bear on planet Earth at the moment, kings and queens. I digress. Finally, from Brother Robin Walker, the final and most modern approach is to claim that the modern authority is worth more than the ancient documentation. It was all in vain, because as Leo Frobenius put it, the spell has been broken. Moreover, the buried treasures of antiquity again revisit the sun. And in saying this, we want to give thanks for Baba John Henrik Clark, for Baba Yusuf Ben Yochanan, for Mama Mary McLeod Bethune, yeah, for Baba Sheikh Anta Diop, for Baba John G. Jackson.
Heal them, heal them, heal them.
For Baba Chancellor William.
Heal them, heal them.
Baba Chinua
Heal them.
yeah? And the greats who have invested significant amounts of time in unearthing our history for us.
Word
Yeah?
sound.
We have a debt to pay to our ancestors for piecing together
Word
the shattered pieces of our history in the
sound.
same way that Osset and Nebhet went around the world,
Word.
traveling, finding the pieces of the body of Asar,
Word
to
sound.
piece it together and resurrect life into that body, kings and queens. Our historians have done an invaluable work, and we're yet to properly realize the value of that work.
Word
Yeah.
sound.
We dismiss them with foolishness about just writing books, and why is that even relevant for us today? And stupidness like that.
Come on.
We need to put some respect on the name of our ancestors, kings and queens. And
Word.
Definitely.
in doing so, we're going to go into the origin of Black History Month in the US of A and call the name of an ancestor that every year Black History Month comes along and his name is not called or not called enough. Despite the fact that he is the founder of the thing. He goes by the name of Baba Carter G. Woodson, kings and queens.
You there?
Need to put some
You
respect
there?
on his name.
You there?
Yeah? The
Great
founder, father of Black History Month. He is the second African to have achieved a PhD from Harvard University in the year 1912, following W.E.B. Du Bois, yes, in that vein, all right? Who, in spite of his many contradictions, also made some significant contributions to piecing together, or at least documenting, our history, brothers and sisters, yeah? And I say, in spite of his many contradictions, poor thing. But as Bobby E. Wright says, our greatest contradiction is that we have no contradictions, because all of our behavior is consistent with our experience as a people, kings and queens. So even our sellouts make sense, all right? But Baba Carter G. Woodson is the founder of the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History that was developed in 1915. And now is referred to as the Association for African American Studies. He also founded the Journal of Negro Life and History in 1916, and he was the owner of a publishing company as well. Bear this in mind. Why do we allow them to give us a month to celebrate our history? The founder of the thing was dealing with this, yeah, from 1915, okay? Formally and institutionally, established an institution in 1915. Ask yourself, yeah? Let me ask that question in a second. Right, so with that, kings and queens, we have the founding of Negro History Week in 1926. So hold on a second, hold on. In 1915, they begin the Association for the Study of Life of Negro, the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. In 1916, they begin the Journal of Negro Life and History. In 1926, they start Negro History Week. Ask yourself, was the work of the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History and the Journal of Negro Life and History confined to 1 week. Was it the intention, therefore, that the study and appreciation of our history be confined to the week that was designated for Negro History Week?
Word song. Word.
Sound plausible.
Word song.
It doesn't even make sense. So why then do we ask questions? Why do we allow them to give us a month to celebrate our history? And this is why we need to know our history. Because if we did, we would know that there was no them that gave us a month to celebrate our history.
Yeah.
Word.
Us. There is no them.
Yeah.
Word
Our
song.
ancestors. We are our ancestors, and our ancestors is us. There is no them.
Come on.
1926, the second week of February was designated as Negro History Week in honor of the life and of the birthday of the ancestor that Prince Carl read so eloquently earlier, Baba Frederick Douglass, Kings and Queens. Yeah. And so we must just put that into context now. So 1, there is no them. Yes. 2, it was not intended for the celebration or the observance of African history to be confined to a week. The week was a focal point. And as Baba Carter G. Woodson would have said, it was about demonstrating and providing platforms for presenting what you have been learning for the entire year. Okay? What they began to do was to develop resources that they were disseminating across the country, particularly focusing on the history of Africans in America, then throughout the Americas, then throughout the world. Yeah, and so they were developing resources and providing it for people so that they can administer classes, yeah, the Black children across the country in America. The second thing that we have to point out is the use of the word Negro. Who are the Negroes, brothers and sisters? The Negroes are the descendants of Mama Africa, who had this particular derogatory terminology imposed upon them throughout the maafa. We discard the term, we reject the term today, but we understand its usage in the time of Carter G. Woodson. And we know that, okay? So we know specifically who Negro History Week was designed to serve. I'm gonna make that point and leave it there and move on. Yeah? Just some text from Carter G. Woodson that we need to know about. Okay? All right, moving on. And giving some ideas of the philosophy and the mission of Carter G. Woodson. Him feel that his race does not amount to much and never will measure up to the standards of other people. The Negro, thus educated, is a hopeless liability.
Come on.
Yeah, we understand what he understands to be the true purpose of history here. History is not just to learn dates, times, events, individual names in the past. History is about readdressing the balance between the oppressor and the oppressed. Aligning the oppressed with a true sense of themselves, because we understand that the history of the oppressor crushes the spark within the Negro. So we need to now reignite the spark in the Negro. And the tool that we are going to use to reignite the spark is a proper understanding of our history from our own perspective, using and building our own institutions. Why? Because the Negro, thus educated by their institutions, is a hopeless liability to us as African people, unable to solve the problems of African people because he was educated to solve the problems of white people. Don't have to go any further. We're gonna move on. Yeah, and I'm gonna. If when you control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. You do not have to tell him to not to stand here or go yonder. He will find his proper place and he will stay in it. You do not need to send him through the back door. He will go without being told. In fact, if there is not a back door, he will cut one for his special benefit. His education makes it necessary. Yeah. So even when we're educated by them, it does not equip us to do for ourselves, to carve out our own entrances and exits in the world. We can only follow the dictates of them. As Mama Marimba says, you can't beat him at his own game. You will only succeed in becoming a better him, which is a diminishment of yourself. And having said that, we want to honor Mama Mary McLeod Bethune as somebody who took on this inspiration, yes, and developed it into institutions to teach Black children. And she says, I am my mother's daughter, and the drums of Africa still beat in my heart.
Word song.
Rest while there is a single Negro boy or girl without a chance to prove his worth.
Come on.
Yeah? So she built schools to teach the children so that they could prove their worth, kings and queens. So we want to know, how did Black History Month come to be? Negro History Week come to be Black History Month. I'm not going to go through everything that is on the screen right about now for the sake of time, except to say that there was a Black Power era in the 1960s, of which everybody listed here was played a significant role. Yes, and in that era, redefinition of the people became one of the actions that we are involved in. Yes, that we became involved in, and we began to discard the use of the term Negro. And one person I will point out, two people I will point out, is one, Mama Mariam Samad, yeah, who was one of the connections, I should actually say, Mama Mariam Samad and Baba Carlos Cooks. Mama Mariam Samad passed away just over a year ago, yeah, in September of 2019, yes, and a born Garveyite, from the womb to the tomb. And also operating in New York during the 1960s was one of the main Garveyites on scene. She was in media, radio and television at the time, yeah, and also Baba Carlos Cook was on the scene as the leading Garveyite organizer of that era, leading buy Black campaigns and other things. And so these two represent the connection from the Garvey movement to the Black Power era. And they actually both knew Omowale Malcolm X relatively well and had a monumental impact upon him and his development, okay? But in light of that, Africans began to reject the word Negro, the term Negro, as the defining characteristic or label for African people, and began to adopt words like African, Afro-American, and Black, yes? And so Baba Kwame Ture declares Black Power. This has a monumental impact upon our community, and we began to affirm Blackness and demand to be referred to as Black, and so on and so forth. And that began to have an impact upon the cultural arts. And so we have here two examples of that, which is Mama Nina Simone, the high priestess of soul, one of the most beautiful artists we've ever produced, ever in the annals of our history. And she writes a song called Young, Gifted, and Black. And then we have James Brown.
Healer.
Indeed, Healer. And I put her here, you know, because we have to understand the levels of Mama Nina Simone. In terms of, I don't know if we fully understand and appreciate what she sacrificed to embed herself and align herself with the movement, yeah, with the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement of her era. Sorry about that. Of her era, kings and queens. And we have a man by the name of James Brown, who was not necessarily, yeah, as connected to the grassroots, right? However, the spirit didn't reach him because the people that were organizing,
yeah.
And even though he was producing this beautiful Black art, but wasn't necessarily outwardly representing Black Power, when the vibes catch him, he says, "Say it loud." Yeah, I'm Black and I'm proud. Yeah? And in the 1970s, believe it or not, became
Bite him.
Yeah, became a significant, if not somewhat misguided, political figure. Yeah, in some respects, but he was concerned with the condition of his people. Yeah, you can watch interviews with him where he's saying this. For example, he talks about wearing the afro. Yeah. And he says, well, they're asking, well, why do you wear the afro? And he says, well, it's about, words to the effect that it's about, you know, us representing ourselves. And if we can all look alike, then maybe we can start all thinking alike. So he realized that this Black Power movement, yes, was waging, and he had to align his image, at the very least, with that movement. And that may begin a process of us thinking alike as a people. Yeah, that's what was going on. And so, but this worldwide Black Power era was not confined to the United States of America. We have all of these leading lights on the African continent. Yeah, from the 1960s into the 70s and into the 80s, kings and queens. I don't have really time to go into all of this, yeah, except to say that the revolutionary era led to the independence of African nations, and the independence of African nation was built upon the fact that Africans were revolutionizing in the grassroots, and that is why Dedan Kimati is here, right? Because sometimes we talk about the heads of states, yeah, Kenyatta and the Sajifo, and Secretary and Modibo Keita and Baba Lumumba. Or we forget the man them that was in the bush with the cutlass. Yeah,
that's right.
Without whom there would be no and the woman them. I agree. Yes, without them there would be no Nkrumah and Secretary and Lumumba and so on and so forth, kings and queens. We forget these people. All right. Time doesn't have to go into this any further. But we'll move on and just say that the same thing was existed in the Caribbean. Yeah. With the revolutionary movements throughout the 60s and the 70s into the 80s. We see Rastafari depicted here, Baba Walter Rodney of Guyana, who had a monumental impact not just on Guyana, but Jamaica, where he lived and taught for a significant period of time. And the fact that his PhD thesis, yeah, that I believe he wrote when he was 26 years old, becomes the book How Europe Underdeveloped Africa.
I think he was 24. 24?
Okay. 2 years shy. Yeah. All right. How Europe underdeveloped Africa. So we can see the trajectory of our revolutionary leaders in the Caribbean in terms of being Africa-centered. Yes, the same for the United States of America. And I just have a whole heap of love for this man by the name of Maurice Bishop.
Well, heal him.
Yeah.
Heal him.
And what he did, what they achieved.
Yeah.
And how he died. It pained me all the while. Yeah. But I encourage ones to watch the speech that he delivered at Hunter College in June of 1983, just months before he was assassinated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen to it carefully.
Come on.
In terms of not just the achievements, but the challenges and the future projections for that revolution in Grenada and what it meant, not just for Africans in Grenada, but throughout the Caribbean, throughout the Americas, and throughout the African world. Yeah? We're too busy. I praise Jesus. And forget about the sacrifices of our ancestors.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to offend anybody, but it's real.
Come on. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Word.
So, kings and queens, this manifests also in the Black Arts movement. Yeah. And all of these figures around the world internationally were key in the Black Arts movement. Yeah. We're not going to go into all of it, except to say that you see here Max Roach and Abby Lincoln pictured.
That's right.
Jazz artists. Yeah. And Max Roach, and I'm looking for an image of this, and I've never been able to find it, and I'm hoping it exists somewhere. But apparently, Max Roach jumped on stage during a Miles Davis performance once, with a placard that read "Africa for the Africans at home and abroad." Yeah. And vexed off Miles Davis, right?
He did.
Yeah, Miles Davis was vexed. He said, "Well, him don't mind the message, but that's not in front. That's not in the middle of the music." You know what I'm saying? Miles Davis didn't understand what was going on. But I want to find that image, brothers and sisters. And I want to mention Mama Miriam Makeba, because whilst exiled from South Africa, Azania, South Africa, she ends up in the United States of America. She marries the father of Black Power, Kwame Ture. The day after she is married to this man, them take off the whole of our record. She's one of the best artists in America. All of her records were removed from the shelves of record stores all over the United States of America. Just so. Yeah? The two of them moved to Guinea under the government of Secretary, who has then made the Sajifo Kwame Nkrumah an honorary president. Yeah? Joint president, and become ambassadors for this Pan-African revolution in the making. 50 years this year is how old the Last Poets' first album is. So I was going to mention that. Yeah, 50 years since the Last Poets released their first album, and we cannot be here and not mention Fela and Nicola Kuti. And move on. All right. But the foundation for all of this, as I've alluded to earlier, kings and queens, is the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who teaches a people without knowledge of their history is like a tree without roots. The statement speaks for itself. But then let us now focus on the UK kings and queens. What we have here pictured is Obi Egbuna, a name that we don't call enough. Father of Black Power in the UK, moves here from Nigeria in the 1960s and becomes the leading light in the Black Power movement. We also have Mama Claudia Jones, who is one of the leading activists of the 1950s and 60s UK, Africa UK. And she is also the mother of Carnival, which begins as a resistance to racial police violence, racial violence, and police brutality. And then we have here pictured Audley Evans, Paul Stevenson, and Owen Henry, who are the conveners of or the leaders of the Bristol bus boycott in 1963 against the colour bar, and the fact that we were not being given just employment in these European institutions, kings and queens. Yeah. So with that, we can go into what we call the Black History Month UK segment. All right. Who you see pictured here is Olive Morris, and I'm forgetting the name of the other sister pictured, but you see Olive Morris sitting on a chair, and the other sister's name who I'm forgetting, but this is actually taken in the UK. Yeah. Okay. We introduced the name Achiaba Adaya Seba, who just like Woodson, is very, very seldom mentioned when we celebrate Black History Month. A man born and raised in Nkrumah's, so not born and raised, but raised in Nkrumah's Ghana, yes. And he travels to the UK in 1984 after having lived in the USA for a while as a teacher. He has an experience in the UK that leads him to start Black History Month. And that experience takes place in the context of what is referred to as the turbulent 80s. Chant Down Babylon, Babylon Abon, yeah?
Yeah.
In relation to African uprisings all over the UK. We're not going to go into all kings and queens, but just to say that we were fighting back against police brutality, racial violence, and all forms of injustices in British society during this period. Yeah. New Cross Massacre 1981, 13 dead and nothing said, leads to the Black People's Day of Action, which leads to, which is the largest mass demonstration of Africans in this country to this date, 25,000 people at least, which leads to, in April of that same year, 1981, the Brixton Uprising, which flourishes into uprisings all over the country. Yes. Later in the decade of the 80s, there is also another Brixton Uprising in response to the shooting of Cherry Gross in Brixton and the death in custody of Cynthia Jarrett in 1985, sparks of Broadwater Farm. Time doesn't allow to go into the significance of that, except to say that this was an increased period of organization, yes, in the African community. And little as it's known, not only was there just rioting, yes, but in the late 1970s, brothers and sisters from the UK traveled to Tanzania at the invitation of Mwalimu Julius Nyerere to attend the 6th Pan-African Congress, yeah, come back, and a number of organizations are formed out of that event, yeah. One of them is the Pan-African Congress movement, yeah. Baba Kwame Ture comes here in 1967, and you know what I learned the other day, which I didn't know before, is that Baba Tony Martin heard Omowale Malcolm X speak in London at the London School of Economics in 1965. Yes, a week or so before he was assassinated. But he also heard Baba Kwame Ture in the UK in 1967. Yes, Baba Kwame Ture also comes there in 1983. A number of Pan-African organizations, including the AAPRP, form as a result of that. The Al-Qaeda Revivalist movement also comes about in this era. And so this we weren't just rioting on the streets. Yeah, there was a wholly organization going on among African peoples, as inspired by organizations such as the Pan-African Congress of Azania. So this flourishes into what is called African Jubilee Year. excuse me, Kings and Queens, African Jubilee year in 1987 and 1988, which is a year designed to commemorate, to celebrate 3 significant anniversaries. One, the centenary of Papa Garvey, in 1987, 100 years old, which was an occasion of worldwide celebration. Okay. Secondly, the anniversary of the founding of the Organization of African Unity, which was considered to be designed, to forward at least a Pan-African agenda, and the 150th anniversary since the emancipation from slavery was declared in the Caribbean. And so, Baba Achiaba Adaya Sebo, in an interview with Brother Kubira Zamani from an organization called Nubiat, says the following: the inspiration for Black History Month came from an incident that happened at the GLC where I worked as a coordinator of special projects. A colleague of mine, a woman, came to work one morning looking very downcast and not herself. I asked her what the matter was, and she confided it to me that the previous night when she was putting her son Marcus to bed, he asked her, "Mum, why can't I be white?" The history that inspires the oppressor with the knowledge that he has accomplished everything, at the same time diminishes the spark within the Negro, making him feel that he does not match up to the standards of other races. Carter G. Woodson. Baba Achiaba Adaya Sebo is now experiencing exactly what Carter G. Woodson outlined generations earlier. He has the experience of teaching in the United States of America, and he understands how using his own experience as an Ashanti and teaching African children his Ashanti culture, Ashanti names, Ashanti foods, Ashanti history, Ashanti garments, that this had a positive impact upon the children there. He learns about the celebration of Black History Month, and he has this experience at the Greater London Council in the 1980s. He goes on to say, so when this incident with Marcus took place in London, it dawned on me that something had to happen here in Britain. I was familiar with Black History Month in America and thought that something like that had to be done here in the UK, because if this, listen to this now, not just because we want to teach the youth them about Lewis Latimer and Garrett Morgan. No, because if this was the fountainhead of colonialism and imperialism and racism, and despite all the institutions of higher learning and research, and also the cluster of African embassies, you could still find a 6-year-old boy being confused about his identity, even though his mother had tried to correct it at birth. Marcus's mother named him after the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey.
Word.
Yes,
Word.
and even with that inspiration, the society in which he lived was able to subject him to the state of collective amnesia, and this young African prince grew up with an inferiority complex about what it meant to be African. So Baba Achiaba Adaya Sebo is not just concerned with teaching African children about great Black contributions to British history. He's concerned about the African knowing himself within the context of British imperialism,
Word.
colonialism,
Word.
and racism.
Come on. Word sound. Word sound and power.
Mm.
So when this incident, we read this already.
Bring it.
Right?
Bring the word. Bring the word.
So Black History Month begins, and the aims and objectives are to promote positive public images and understanding, that should say, apologies for the typo, of Africans and people of African descent.
Come on.
All right, we know who that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? All right, we know exactly who that was. To promote, Africans and people of African descent, and encourage the positive teaching and development of their history, culture, and struggle. 2, to support African organizations and liberation movements based in London. Now, it occurs to me that in 1987, when they were putting forward African Jubilee Year and Black History Month, they received government funding for this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they were able to put in a document at that time the support of African organizations and liberation movements based in London. I still get the funding. That is
The man still give them the money.
Man still getting the money. Yeah, we could just about get money for African Caribbean nowadays.
Yeah.
And diversity. We could just about get money for diversity.
Yeah, just put LGBT on it.
On it, that kind of diversity they would take.
Definitely get.
I should do it.
African Jubilee Year. There was a declaration associated with African Jubilee Year. And it said the African Jubilee Year Declaration is therefore a testament of London's solidarity with Africa and the international struggles against apartheid, which was the key political issue that Africans were mobilizing around during that time. Yeah. With Africa and the international struggles against apartheid, by the designation of October as Black History Month, it is our expression that what? Africa's ideals shall forever be manifested in the upliftment of the African personality in our schools, institutions of higher learning, communities, borough councils, and especially in the hearts and minds of politicians. Maybe I'll explain that politicians part in the question and answer if I have time. But just to say that these are some of the other leading lights. There are more who were involved in the development of Black History Month over here. Herman Ousley, Linda Bellos, and Bernie Grant, who all operated in the political sphere. And this particular picture is here of Baba Bernie Grant because this is how he walked into Parliament in 1986.
You there?
Not exactly that, but in similar garb. Yeah, he wore his agbada. Yeah, you know what I'm saying, and caused consternation in British society, kings and queens. And so we just want to, you know what I mean, give honor and homage to that particular stuff right there. Hearing a bit of feedback.
The attention will be on your side. Again, it's a physical gold card, and if you pay with that,
If we can mute that, give thanks. Right.
Really looking forward to launch that product again in November.
Give thanks. So this is a image, yeah, albeit not very high quality image of an African Jubilee Year observance, and you can see Papa Garvey prominently featured in the background here, kings and queens. And on the right, you see the flyer for the first Black History Month observance in the UK, October the 1st, yes, 1987. And the special guest is Dr. Maulana Karenga, the founder of Kwanzaa, stalwart of the Black Power era, and so on and so forth. But not only him, look at the lineup, kings and queens, of brothers and sisters who came from the international world community, yeah, who were invited and actually did come. Yes, during the month of October 1987 to celebrate Black History Month.
Yes,
illustrious list.
You did.
And we can add to this list, yeah, one who didn't make it to the UK, but sent a letter of support. And he goes by the name of Baba Thomas Sankara. Support Baba Achiaba Adaya Sebo and the brothers and sisters in the initiation of Black History Month and African Jubilee Year. Weeks later, he also was assassinated. Kings and queens. Yes? But Mama Nina Simone was here. Baba Tony Martin was here.
You there?
Grassa Machel was here, the wife, the second wife of Samora Machel. Because Mozambique was in the process of a revolution during that time, kings and queens. Yeah? Burning Spear was here.
Yeah.
Max Roach again was here. Sally Mugabe was here because it was Zimbabwe today, Azania tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Zimbabwe was made independent, so-called, after a armed rebellion in 1980. So the push was now for Azania, South Africa. Mama Frances Quest Wilson was here.
Yeah.
1987. Yes. Baba, the Twin Towers of African scholarship, historical scholarship, Baba John Henry Clark and Baba Yusuf Benyakannon was here.
You damn
yeah, during that time. So once again, there is no them. Them never give we Black History Month.
Come on. Come on.
We have to know that. All right? Okay. Uncle Tunji, how much time do I have left?
It's gone through.
All right.
We're trying to be tight.
Okay, I'll try to be as tight as possible. So there's actually 2 sections left here. And we'll see. I'll get through the first one and then we'll see where we go with the second one.
All right, cool.
In fact, you know what? Let me skip the first one and go right to the second one. Yeah? No, in fact, no, I shouldn't. Right? Right. So I'm gonna deal with identity. I'm not gonna define identity so much here, but look at what our identity is in this day and age. Yeah, and I'm gonna look at it through the lens of the last World Cup in 2018. Yeah, because record numbers of young African men and women were supporting the England team. And this was weird, even for brothers and sisters who are my age, because we know we don't support England, right? I just hit that, yeah? Right? Wherever the blackest team is, that's who we're supporting, yeah? When it comes to the World Cup. We might support Ian Wright, yeah? We love Ian Wright. But if he's playing for England against Cameroon, we're supporting Cameroon, yeah? I just saw it go. This appeared to be different. Yeah, in 2018, record numbers of black people and black young people in particular were supporting the England team. And this seemed to be why? Because like half the England team was man them. Yeah, we grew up with them and them thing there. So now they're in England. Yeah, so you feel like we've got to support them. But brother David Olusoga, who has some good work and documentaries on is it BBC? That he's done in terms of Britain's Forgotten Slave Owners and a couple others, yeah, wrote an article for The Guardian entitled Gareth Southgate's England team reflects the best of us. It feels good to embrace them, yeah? And he said, for black and Asian people of my generation, the England team and the cross of St. George were once ingredients in a toxic broth. For decades, a minority of England fans brought the nation and the national team into disrepute. Minority, yes. Into disrepute, bringing violence both to foreign streets and immigrant communities at home. The banner that fluttered above many of these ugly scenes was the flag of St. George.
Yep.
He goes on to say, such violence and abuse, have not completely gone away. Sorry, I just need to just negotiate something here. Give thanks, right? Yes, may not completely gone away, but in recent years, memories and associations, those memories and associations have increasingly seemed out of step with contemporary reality. Gareth Southgate's squad, with an average age of 26, have no memories of those earlier decades. They are England's most diverse World Cup team. 11 of the 23-man squad are black or mixed race. And that diversity runs deeper beyond so-called visible minorities. Harry Kane, for example, is of Irish descent. So even the Irish are getting a look in the England team. And that's something to celebrate. He goes on. In this glorious summer, we find ourselves with a young, diverse, dynamic team who evidently like one another and are led by an inspirational manager. He, in turn, is supported by a backroom staff made up of intelligent and inspirational professionals, such as the psychologist, Dr. Pippa Grange. The woman being credited with help. So now we've got a woman, yes, in the mix, yeah, being credited with helping England win their first penalty shootout, yeah, in a World Cup. A new professionalism and a new culture has been forged under the St. George's flag. Under the St. George's flag. That flutter, sorry, flag, under the St. George's flag, sorry, that flutter over England's training camp, the St. George's Park near Derby. Yeah? No, what me want for know, kings and queens, is if it is indeed the case that the youth them have no memories of what their parents and grandparents suffered in earlier decades, why is that something to celebrate? Why is it the fact that we don't remember what our parents and grandparents went through?
Come on.
While St. George's flag and the Union Jack fluttered above them, why is that collective amnesia a cause for celebration?
Come on. Come on.
Why?
Serious.
Why indeed?
Serious. Come on.
So now we can support the England team guilt-free without the memories of grandpa and grandma and mama and papa.
Cognitive dissonance.
Why is that something to celebrate? And I'm suggesting that this trajectory is becoming a dominant trajectory.
It is. It is
Among Africans in Britain, whereby the extent of the value of our history is Black contributions to British society.
Come on. Word.
So Lovers Rock becomes British music. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
And a contribution of Black people to Britain rather than African music and the development of African culture in Britain. There is a difference. The dominant trajectory of our appreciation of our history is going to be confined to Black veterans of the war effort of World War I and World War II, of Black faces in old British monarchies. Yes? And that's not to say that we shouldn't talk about these things, but the context is very important.
Come on.
We cannot casually celebrate our contribution to the war effort. We have to understand it in the context of colonization.
Mhm.
And colonization is not a thing to celebrate.
Come on.
Right.
Come on.
But now they want us to celebrate our contribution to Fidem War and the maintenance of their colonial efforts in the world. We must be very careful how we align ourselves with the devil
Come on.
and erase
Word.
ourselves in the process.
Word
That's right.
sound.
Kings and
Word
queens.
sound. Word.
So having said that, we have to understand the true meaning of history. Now, we're living in the time of Brexit, yeah? Them say we are leave the EU. I know we can't leave, yeah? There's some speculation about whether it's actually going to go through or not, yeah? Then now with that COVID, and then I wonder, oh, them I got, distribute the vaccine based upon the new measures, yeah? The new deal, yeah, with the EU and all them things there, that them want to know. But when we listen to the EU debates, brothers and sisters, especially in 2016, we get to understand or appreciate. Could you say? Bruh? Sorry, brothers and sisters. Could you say? Okay. All right. Yeah. You okay? Good boy. I come in, I'm gonna feed you in a second, all right? Good boy. Yes, we get to understand that the main era of history, yeah, that they were dealing with during that time was World War II. Yeah. And you hear in the debates and the conversations, this is the longest period, yeah, of peace ever in the history of Europe. Lord.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel
Never
that.
had a period of peace in Europe longer than 70 years. And them say we are savage and barbaric to reggae. Yeah? But you get to realize, based upon the context of the conversation, that Britain is still solving the problems coming out of World War II. The idea being that nations that are economically tied to each other are less likely to go to war with each other. Out of World War II comes the IMF and the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization, the United Nations. All of the institutions that were designed to stabilize Europe after it mashed up itself, and that were in turn weaponized against African people when we began to revolutionize for freedom, autonomy, and independence during that same era.
Yeah.
So the question I was asking myself is, well, what if Britain is still solving the problems born out of World War II? What was the condition of African people at that same period of time? And what can we learn in terms of the problems that we need to be solving in this day and age? Taken from the great and illustrious book that you can't read once. You have to come back and read it every now and then, Kings and Queens. You know what I mean? Yeah. From Baba Chinwezu, Decolonizing the African Mind. He says, the possibility
Good
of
book.
history
Yep.
providing cultural therapy for development has been remarked upon by Joseph Kizerbo, an African historian from Burkina Faso, the nation of Thomas Sankara, the nation of upright people. History, Baba Kizerbo says, can play the same role as the psychoanalyst. As long as we don't know how to explain certain events, certain behavior which exists today in the individual and collective planes, we will remain prisoners of our past because we don't understand it.
Oh, come on.
Case in point, studying the past or our history does not make us prisoners of our past. Not knowing our history
Powerful.
makes us prisoners of our past.
Powerful word, Sam.
If one doesn't understand his history, even his own private history, he can cultivate complexes, believing, for example, that one is damned, born of the dark continent and the barbaric savage people them of the dark continent. History allows us to understand who we are. If one doesn't know who one is, one can't know what one wants to become. I think that the almost exclusive role of history is to lay down this fundamental basis for development. Baba Chinwezu continues. Following the line of thought expressed above, I have come to believe that our past, by the tasks it implicitly sets for us, is our compass to our future. We've gone all the way back to Baba John Henrik Clark. Yes, our compass for finding ourselves on the map of human geography. That map of our past is the pathfinder to our destiny. Thus, if we misread the map or we consult an incorrect map, we will misdirect our efforts in shaping our future. Where were we during FIDEM World War II? We were revolutionizing. Well, first of all, a good few 100,000 of us were in FIDEM army. A fight FIDEM war. Yeah. Part of the reason for that is that we felt that we would get the benefit of greater autonomy back home. Yes, increased self-government. Yeah. Back home was one of the things that Africans who went to the war were fighting for. But some Africans didn't go to FIDEM war. They waged the war at home in Kenya and Congo and South Africa and Jamaica and Trinidad and pushed for independence. Yeah. So we have a situation whereby this was Africa, yeah, before 1884, 1885, as drawn up by the Europeans. All right. Then now we have the Berlin Conference of 1884, 1885, which makes Africa look a little bit like this. And then we have the post-colonial era where Africa's looked soft. 54, as Mama Auntie Affiong said, 54 states, 54 beggars. Yeah? Right? And economically unviable states shaped in the image of European for the intentions to meet the intentions of Europe and the European people. All right? So now, during this era, we were revolutionizing to get out of this condition of colonization. But the oppressor pulled a fast one on us and instituted, with the help of some of us so-called elites, the system of neocolonialism. All right? So, Baba Chinwezu continues, the Europeanized African, for his part, is overwhelmed by the fantastic achievements of industrial civilization. But having accepted the European propaganda that industrial civilization is the genetic property of its European pioneers, he fails to distinguish industrial civilization as a type from European civilization as an instance of the type. His desire for the former, industrialization, is therefore perverted into a wish to assimilate into the latter, European culture. Obviously, he can't resist European imperialism if he believes that Europeans are the sole owners of the paradise of industrial civilization, or that European languages, which are colonial languages in Africa, are indispensable for participation in industrial civilization. Such veneration of alien cultures leaves the African susceptible to foreign domination. We have bought into the cultural superiority of white people and therefore subordinate ourselves to Westminster democracy.
Word.
Free market capitalism.
Come on. Come on.
And British industrialized education system.
Come on.
How was this process instituted? By the way, kings and queens, this book is old, but it's not outdated. Yeah? Read How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by Walter Rodney. It must go on.
Good book.
All right? Teaches us the Portuguese and the Spanish. But I'm homing in now on the issue of language, okay, as a tool of colonization. The Portuguese and the Spanish had always shown contempt for African language and religion. Schools of kindergarten and primary levels of education for African in Portuguese colonies was nothing more but agencies for the spread of Portuguese language. Yes? Most schools were controlled by the Catholic Church as a reflection of the unity of church and state in Portugal. In the little-known Spanish colony of Guinea, the small amount of education given to Africans was based upon eliminating the use of local languages. Agriculture was not carried on as a scientific industry. The production of cash crops in Africa was stimulated by the minimum expenditure on the part of the Europeans with no infusion of new technology. Therefore, when educational advisors suggested agricultural education relevant to African needs, this meant no addition to African knowledge. Agriculture became an apology for a subject. So, the teaching of the white European language facilitated the growing of cash crops to benefit the economies of Europe and the deculturalization of African people at the same time. Yes? Now, that was a condition that we were subjected to during colonization. So, now we're going to pick up, yes, our African-centered historical compass. Yes?
Come on.
Understand the problems that we have been subjected to in history, yes, to define and tell our political and cultural time of day. We are still speaking the European language.
Come on.
The European language is still the primary language of instruction.
Come on.
We are still using freedom education system,
Word.
and our economies are still creating cash crops and cash resources for the benefit of Europe.
Come on. Word,
That
son.
is our political and cultural time of day as it stands right here now.
Word sound.
So picking up our African-centered historical compass, where we're there, we know where they know. Let's chart true north, yes, and figure out how to get from Yassa, Maafa, yes, engage the process of Sankofa, and return to a condition of Ma'at.
Ma'at. Word. Word
Let
sound.
us see how to do that right about now.
Word
And we have
sound.
some roadmaps in the work of the great and illustrious Baba Kwesi Pra,
Mm-hmm. You live?
developing something called the African Literacy Project. Teaches us. Kwesi, in Kwesi Pra, is launching a Pan-African literacy movement based upon clustering dialects into 12 mutually understood written languages, thus increasing access to information, reducing government costs, and enhancing ties among formerly separate communities. Kwesi's goal is to harmonize dialects into mutually understandable languages, thereby creating economies of scale. Not neo-colonial Bantustans, marginalized from each other, and each benefiting the economies of Europe, but economies of scale in teaching and learning literacy. Kwesi's groundbreaking research reveals that 75 to 80% of all sub-Saharan Africans speak one of 12 root languages. Nguni, Soto, Tswana, Swahili, Amhara, Eastern Interlaclustine, Western Interlaclustine, Kitala, Haura, Yoruba, Igbo, Bambara, Fulful, Oromo, and Berber. Dialects within each, dialects within each root grouping are mutually intelligible. The idea is timely in the Pan-African context because of the current shift away from written languages as a basic building block of an educated citizenry. We have to move away from the reliance upon colonial languages.
Come on.
Foundation of literacy. Yes? Kwesi's approach will create a new kind of literacy base, linguistically uniting peoples who live in different countries. For example, speakers of Be, a common root language in West Africa, would be able to communicate in writing with other native speakers in Nigeria, Benin, and Togo. In Africa, hundreds of dialects, written dialects, masquerade as languages, isolating communities. Yes? So now, whereas they use language to lock us into these little colonial states, we're going to use language to break through the barriers of those colonial states. And even the concept of tribe. Yes? Isolating communities, impeding efforts to literacy and reducing the range and scope of literacy's impact. Until recently, African governments had not been aware that these linguistic barriers were surmountable. They just accepted them. Thus, literacy efforts and investments have followed old colonial patterns, reinforcing these barriers without really understanding them. To get around the problem, governments have relied heavily upon European written languages. For example, the South African government declared 11 official languages in an attempt at inclusion, but this has created enormous difficulties with teaching literacy and translation costs. Kwesi asserts that the 11 languages are in fact dialects of 4 root languages. Yeah? For instance, Zulu, Xhosa, Swati, Ndebele, Shangaan, Ngoni, Tumbaka, and Tsenga are 85% mutually intelligible as spoken languages, and all fall into the root group called Nguni. By creating a written form of Nguni, all these communities will have access to materials in their own language that is also culturally sensitive. The impact of this unification has huge implications given the history of division between, for example, the South Africa Zulus and Xhosa speaking peoples. It also means that in Tanzania, Malawi, and Zambia that groups in Tanzania, Malawi, and Zambia have access to the same materials, since related languages are spoken in those areas, emphasizing the arbitrariness of the borders created by colonial powers of the past. So not only now are we getting rid of the colonial borders, but through the concept of tribe, they have induced in us this sense of antagonistic difference, yeah, from our brothers and sisters. And because we are culturally deracinated, culturally cut off from our roots, we think that we're different from the brothers and sisters who live next door to us, that we share cultural and historical lineage with. But piecing together about the culture helps to do away with those perceptions. Is everybody with me?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. One of the first effects of this project is that it reduced the perception of differences among the people who speak different dialects of Be, for example. Yeah. And then it goes into talking about how he's developing this by developing written documents, yeah, in these mutually intelligible languages, yeah, written forms of these mutually intelligible languages, yeah, on subjects like HIV and AIDS, human rights, soil fertility, water, sanitation, and agriculture. So now the next step is to translate philosophies and opinions of Marcus Mosiah Garvey,
Yeah.
and Blueprint for Black Power,
Yeah.
and Neocolonialism, the last age of imperialism,
Yeah.
into the same languages, kings and queens.
Mhm.
Yeah. By improving accessibility, his work will facilitate information distribution to a significantly larger percentage of the population. So we see a cultural problem being solved, a political problem being solved, and an economic problem being solved. We cannot use the historical compass of Britain to chart our journey into the future. We have to use our own historical compass, find our own political and cultural time of day, and chart our own journey into the future. Find me on all them social media, yeah. And give thanks for listening to the presentation. And I'm one.
And I'm worried.
Get it?
Amen.
Get him.
Get it?
Get him.
Get it?
Get him.
Kandamwadi, give thanks.
Kandamwadi.
Give thanks, Brother Shakura, for that serious presentation.
Amazing.
What we want to do now, we've got a bit of time. We want to open up the floor, really, the forum for any questions or comments, clarifications to the power of the word. I mean, we know that we had people constantly joining throughout the presentation, so people may have caught everything, but certainly a fitting way to start off the season, sister and brother. So just going to say, identify yourselves, and ideally, if you ask a question, it'd be good if you could see you as well. And any questions to our brother Shakura, Tendamwari.
Tendamwari.
Kandamwadi.
Tendamwari.
Tendamwari.
Sister Shanice in the
Greetings,
house.
Sister
Let me put on
Shanice.
my video.
Oh, hail you, Sister
Yeah.
Shanice.
Rise up, family. Yeah,
yes.
so I only caught the tail end of the presentation. Very good presentation, Shakura. And, you know, as you was presenting and as you was talking, you know, what was coming back to me is what the brothers on the continent often say, you know, that they have cousins on the other side of the border, that when they put these borders in place at the Berlin conference, you know, it actually went through, basically, I don't want to say tribes, through nations, you know, and on both sides, there were, you know, their cousins, their family members who spoke the same language, shared the same customs, shared the same culture. And women in particular, the sort of market traders, who go backwards and forwards from across the borders all the time to do business, you know, are basically talking the same language with their brothers and sisters on the other side of the borders. And, you know, I think it's an excellent strategy to use, you know, the language, the culture that's already shared, you know, as a way of kind of unifying the different groups. I think it's an excellent strategy. I doubt, you know, in the short term, it's something that the governments would take on. It doesn't mean that, you know, there shouldn't be a push towards that, but I think it's more likely that, you know, we would have to be the ones starting our own schools out there and be introducing it in an exciting way so that others would want to follow. I genuinely feel that in anything we want to do on the continent, you know, it's going to have to be ground up, and we're going to have to take the lead, and others will follow. That's my thoughts. Tendai Moari.
Tendai Moari.
Tendai Moari.
Thanks, Sister Shanice. I see a raised hand from Princess Kianga.
Hello, Uncle Shakura.
Tendai Moari, Princess.
I just wanted to say thank you for including so many people from this country in the UK, because people often talk about American people, because I'll be able to tell all my friends at school.
Beautiful.
Right.
Give thanks, Princess.
Hey.
Give thanks. Give thanks.
All right. Ilar.
Right.
Hello.
Give thanks.
Tendai Moari.
Tendai Moari.
Let me just share something. It's something that Brother Shakura referred to in terms of a reference for the there's a book that was written called Our Story, which is really the book, the companion book to the first Black History Month. I'm reading from introduction, the fourth paragraph. London's celebration of African Jubilee Year received international attention and messages on the occasion of the launching of the year received from the late President Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso, who sent a video message inviting the committee to an anti-apartheid conference he was hosting in October 1987. So we know from what Brother Shakura said, he was inviting the organizers of Black History Month UK in October 1987 to a conference in Burkina Faso. As we know, that didn't happen because October was the very month that he was assassinated.
Yeah.
So, but the reference, sisters and brothers, is Our Story, the Handbook of Contemporary African History and Contemporary Issues, edited by Achiaba Adaya Sebo and Ansel Wong. So that's a reference for those who have that, sisters and brothers. Any other questions? Let me check the chat if there's anything comes in.
Brother Olatunji.
Tendai
Moari. Can we just steal a moment just to acknowledge the presence of our Watoto? There are a few of them who are with us. Princess Kianga, your own princess, just spoke. Prince Kimani, Prince Rafiki, mine and Sister Kai's grandsons, and we have Prince Carl, who read the quote from Baba Frederick Douglass.
Yeah.
I don't know if there are any other Watoto in any other household tuning in. If they want to reveal themselves so we can recognize them, parents can share their names. But I think it's always good to recognize our Watoto when they are among us. I think we should just hail them, beloved brothers and sisters, and make them feel our love.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Tendai Moari.
Sorry,
continue, brother.
No, just simply, if we want to ensure we have a future, our young people need to be getting access to this information, this knowledge, and this inspiration, sisters and brothers. So we give back again, before she comes in, to Sister Amatai, who delivered a powerful presentation early today, specifically for our Watotos as well. So help Sister Amatai, one of our most profound and leading historians here in the UK. Tendai Moari, Sister Amatai, over to you.
Tendai Moari, thank you, brother Olatunji. Brother Shakura, I just want to thank you for a absolutely brilliant, fantastic presentation. The last time I saw this presentation a few years ago, but I'm really certain that you've had it more. You know, I'm seeing much more. It's further developed. It's just absolutely brilliant. And, you know, I can see this in a book in some future years. Right. Baba Carter G. Woodson, you talked about that in his time, his organization and the people who worked with him, they were developing, well, actually, they did develop many resources and we're getting those resources out to our people in educational institutions, in the homes, into the communities, so that our people could develop themselves, learn their history, learn their culture, etc. You know, it makes me wonder how much we've gone back in time, because we should see a lot more of this. Yes, there are books out there, but there should be a lot more resources. So we've got a lot of work to do. I want to ask, relating to Brother Kwesi Pra, has he got a strong, well-resourced team behind him? Because this project that he's involved with, it's so vitally important. And what we find often is that you find somebody great like that, committed and have got the skills and the knowledge. And when they pass, unfortunately, because they're the driving force and the main one, sometimes their work just gets forgotten and left. So I just want to know what sort of team he's got behind him, how he's resourced, and how is the project developing and growing, because we want to see this really take off and we want to see it develop and being implemented as well, as quickly and as fast as possible. And hopefully when the elder passes, there's an institution that's going to bring it into the future. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari.
Should I answer that now?
Yeah, go for it, bro.
And give thanks to Matai. He is the head of an institution called the Center for Advanced Studies of African Society, yeah, based in South Africa. Now, interestingly, I was scheduled to actually interview him last year, and last minute it never quite took place. And I was going to ask him that specific question. I don't know where it's at the moment, but I was listening to an interview that we did with him. I managed to find it. The interview that we did with him on Africa Suites of Al Kebalan, and he was saying. By the way, you can listen to it now on our Mixcloud. Yeah, it's
okay.
Up. Yeah, and he was emphasizing the point that it's not just him; he has a team, yeah, of linguists throughout the continent. That he's kind of set the program and they have done a lot of the work. Yeah, he was emphasizing that point quite emphatically. So he definitely does have a team. The governments are there are from what he said, there are some governments who are accepting the work to some degree, but not to all degrees, if that makes sense. Yeah. In a sense, you know, coming from our revolutionary Pan-Africanist sensibilities, you know, that this work should really form the foundation of doing away with the border between Burkina Faso and Ghana and Togo, for example. Do you know what I'm saying? And South Africa,
Côte d'Ivoire,
Zimbabwe, yeah, and allow them something there.
Yeah.
And it would seem that most are unwilling to do that, except for the fact that we're hearing some reasonably forward-thinking news coming out of East Africa at the moment, because they're talking about East African Federation. Yeah. And there are some contradictions there, obviously, but I don't remember hearing that language at any point in the last 20, 30 years in terms of federating a section of the African continent. Yeah. And when you study the work of Baba Sheikh Anta Diop in the book Black Africa, yeah, Economic and Cultural Basis for African Federated State, you know, there's some work for us to take advantage of in terms of where our material circumstances have brought us, because I don't think the political will has necessarily been there, but the material reality has just shown us that what the Osaje for and Baba Patrice Lumumba was saying 2-3 generations ago is absolutely correct. We cannot say this current constitution is unsustainable. Yeah, and so I just hope that we as Africans in the Caribbean learn from that example and begin to standardize our patois, so-called Creole, and like the Cromanti language in terms of languages of the region. Yeah, there's no reason why there needs to be a French speaking and an English speaking in the Caribbean in that sense, right? Just what I'm saying. If we understand, you know what I'm saying, the thing properly. So yeah, so I'm saying that to say that it seems to me that there needs to that same work needs to be done in the Caribbean, emphasizing the fact that our languages in the Caribbean are in fact African. Yeah, and also teaching African languages in the Caribbean, because the more you study African languages, the more it makes sense to you.
Word.
You know what I'm saying? So,
Word.
I hope that answers.
Yes, Tatenda.
Tendamari. For the question, let me just take a moment to hail up. I don't know, obviously the Zoom is an international platform. I don't know if you have any international guests here, but I do know we have one. I want to take this time to hail up our warrior queen, Sister Dr. Sandra Richards, who I believe is currently there in Barbados. Obviously, quite a focus of discussion at the moment, given the decision of the Beijing government.
Yeah.
So I just want to send some love back to Sister Dr. Sandra Richards and just hailing you up for the work that you continue to do, and also for linking us here for a short time this evening. Tendamari, Queen.
Tendamari.
Tendamari family.
Tendamari.
Only oceans separate us, nothing else.
Indeed.
That's right. That's right.
Our young king, brother Shakura. Well, first, before I speak with you, let me just make sure I greet all the elders. I want to acknowledge Brother Leader Vandaka for your continued works. Your legacy is phenomenal.
Bless you.
I know you are a very humble man, but your legacy is phenomenal.
Bless you, my sister.
You know, I really appreciate all that you do, and greet the rest of the family. Tendai Mware. Young King Shakura, what a force you are becoming. Well, no, you have become, not even you are becoming.
Yeah.
You have become, and so I am juggling with trying to honor some timelines that I have, but I certainly wanted to be in your audience and was not disappointed at all. It is very encouraging to know that the works that were done before have not been forgotten. And it's also very good to know that there is a very acute awareness that ones will celebrate our amnesia. They will celebrate our amnesia, because therefore you can do it again. And that's why it's important that we should always remember, always acknowledge. When I saw the image of our late Bernie Grant in his African garments, I remember the time, and our young people, this generation, many of them are asking the question, what did we do? You know, what did you know, we're very angry. The elders did nothing. And that's because they're not aware of that which happened before. So a presentation such as this, I think, should be shown widely so that they can see that they are not at the beginning of a movement. They are continuing a movement. And they are building on the works that have gone before. And so, you know, I really applaud you, and I hope that this presentation will be made available again and again and again so that they can see it. I know your editing skills are very sharp, so you edit it and put it on Instagram, put it on that gram, the other gram, and even the gram with tech vinyl, all the grams.
All the grams.
Give thanks, Madam Moray.
Yes.
Hello.
And don't worry. I did see a hand from Brother Max.
I just want to say though that in spite of the fact that only the water separates us, I'm sure most of us would prefer to be on your side of the waters.
Indeed.
Definitely.
At this moment in time, but in our circle. And if you are able to, Auntie, I would love to hear from you in terms of this move to get rid of the monarch of this particular country. And the viability of it.
The WOB.
Yes. Took me a while, but yeah.
The conversation actually is one that has been going on for some considerable time. without going into too much detail, because I think it's a presentation in and of itself.
Yeah.
We can't afford to underestimate the impact of the colonial project. And so there are activists who are pushing for the removal of a number of things which just continue that legacy and give the very, the let me say, the small population of white folk, let me just call them white folk here, comfort. But you have a large population here who will say things like, we don't see what the problem is. It's always been like this. I don't notice Nelson. I don't, why are we disturbing and upsetting? And so there's some work to be done in the wider population to help people recognize the significance of removing these legacies and these bastions and these symbols that fuel white supremacists, however they are manifesting. And here they manifest as a financial powerhouse and a political influence and a number of things. But the conversation happens. There are always going to be casualties in a movement such as this. So it is not necessarily easy, but the move to have that happen is strong. The Prime Minister here is clearly supportive of this, but the political wranglings are beyond me. Right. And so much of us would love to just kick down things and just go mash up things and just throw things in the water and just remove things, but that's not how the political world works. There's obviously an economical or economic aspect as well. So there are a number of things that are going on, but it's a very lively conversation, and the activists on the ground here are very determined. So more than that, I cannot say, as I don't know. It's not that I can't necessarily reveal it. I don't know it. Yes. But it's very real, and I look forward. Yes. The idea that many of us have had in the Caribbean, that we are independent, has been very troubling to me. Very troubling to me, because even when there are new governments sworn in, they swear allegiance to the Queen. And so the idea of being independent and actually being a sovereign state, the alignment has needed to happen. So I'm optimistic, as always. If we're not optimistic, we can't be in this movement. So give thanks.
Give thanks, Auntie. I appreciate it. I'm reminded that some years ago, during an election, former Prime Minister of Jamaica caused a stir when she used the term "time come," to refer to the situation of the monarch of England being the official head of state of Jamaica. And so people thought that, was something I go on now, and it just didn't.
Was that before or after Harry visited the island?
I cannot remember. Yeah, so I think it was before though.
Probably, Harry changed up the thing.
True. And we know that he has cachet. He apparently has cachet with black women. So the reality is that when I heard this, I took it like, okay, this sounds serious. But I want, because we've heard it before in relation to Jamaica. I wanted to check if the political will is serious behind it. But I get the nuances in what you're saying, Auntie. So give thanks for that answer there.
Tendamara, just a quick thing on that subject. Actually, I see Brother Gordon's hand. Also, I see Brother Nat got a hand up as well on that subject. I know our sister Shanice dealt with this very issue on a show on Galaxy. I don't know, sis, if that's a show available to listen to again. And if so, if they can do, but I know it's certainly something that they had our brother David Commersong on the show to deal with that very issue recently on Galaxy FUE station, galaxyfue.com. Tendamari, Sister Shanice.
Yeah, Tendamari. It's one of the shows. Yeah, first of all, it was very remiss of me actually not to acknowledge the leader of the house. My sincere apologies, Leader Mandaka. Please forgive me for just coming in with my question and failing to acknowledge you. My sincere apologies.
You're blessed, my sister. You're blessed.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you in the house.
And it's an honor to have you, my sister, present.
It's my honor.
Bless you.
And yes, we had David Commissioner on one of my shows, and you know, he's very close to the Prime Minister, so he was able to share with us a lot of information about you know, the sort of politicking behind the scenes with regards to this. It's one of the shows that's been requested, so I will do the works and try and put that up, because yeah, it's groundbreaking, isn't it? This is history in the making. And as we know, the royals are really worried that the other Caribbean islands are going to be following in their footsteps. And yeah, they probably will be wheeling out Harry. The Queen's too old to, you know, get the attraction that maybe she used to get back.
Harry's got no clout anymore. He's not a royal. They can't wheel out Harry again.
They're gonna wheel him back in.
Not correction, not the queen, the WOB, Brother Olatunji.
The WOB, the WOB. Yeah,
oh, the WOB. I didn't get that. What's that abbreviated for?
Well,
the rest of them a special terminology, which is probably more apt than the Queen, but there are children present.
Oh, okay. Yes. Tendai Mari.
So yes, so I saw Brother Nat hand up, also Brother Gordon as well. So let's go to Brother Nat first.
Yes, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Greetings, Brother Nat.
Greetings, salute to Brother Ntunje and Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mari to you, brother.
This is first we give thanks, Tendai Mari, Brother Leader Bandaka, and to as echoing what Sister Shanice just said as well, just to greet the elders in here. I was just flicking across and seeing those that are in the group and thinking, as a young man, I guess still of 34, and coming into this, what Prophet Kwaku, Prophet Munduti Kwaku says on radio often of Africation, you know, Africating the mind. In coming into that late in my years, I think I probably sparked that spirit of inquiry from about 22, 23. And again, to acknowledge the young people, I feel like I'm one of them. It is comforting to know that there are family members, sisters and brothers, aunties and uncles, elders in this very meeting that I just gained wisdom from a distance, who would never even know. I remember reaching out to Sister Dr. Sandra, and after her joining and just speaking briefly in one of our other, you know, Africating Zoom chats, I think it was Auntie Jean's, and then going away and do my research, not even to the full extent on her, and then having to have that that desire to want to message her and just thank her. And I don't think she properly knew what I was thanking her for. But it's just to say I extend that, and it is just comforting again to know that there is wisdom. There are those from different Pan-Africanist movements that one can go to either physically or even virtually now, and take in more wisdom and more knowledge. I guess my question is in navigating the spectrum of our African sisters and brothers, you know, from those that are really internally programmed, you know, have that internal racist mindset, that mental slave mindset, to as far as those that want to, you know, bomb Babylon, you know, how does one kind of navigate that? Because my whole running through this is that unity, solidarity is the key, and to less kind of focus on the what one might personally disagree with or not align themselves with, and look at the unity. But is there any other further advice that can be given? And also, just as someone who is very much about solution and trying to be the change, with regards to that brother Kwesi, was it, who was speaking about languages? Yes.
Kwesi Pra.
Oh, the Kwesi Pra, yeah.
Thank you, brother Shakura. How can we support, basically, as diaspora, as having a strong sterling? straight away I'm hinting on funding, but like, is there anything that we can do over here specifically from your advice or any of the family's advice that you would think would be most effective to make sure this is foundational, that this is a dynasty, a legacy that he's leaving? Tendai Moari.
Bro. My answer to your question, is in terms of navigating through between and among our people, from people that are completely assimilated to people that just want to bond on the system. I think the way to navigate it is through organization and institution building. There is no other way. Our people are going to be organized according to the institutions that we build. And I think that we're waiting for a magical moment when all the lights switch on. And the masses of our people will converge, on our movement and our organization in their droves, to take part in the work and sign up to. It's not going to happen, It's going to be gradual. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be progressive, and it's going to be built upon the successes and our capacity to demonstrate what it is we say we stand for. That is it, yesterday I had a live conversation entitled African Power, the political purpose of African identity, because we're at a moment right about now where we have this various different movements that I collectively refer to as ABA, anything but African. We are the original Hebrews. We are the original Americans. We are the original Indians. We are the original peoples of Australia and New Zealand. Yes, we are. You know what I'm saying? We are the original Martian, right? You know what I'm saying? Right? We are the original man, and all of this is designed to diminish the centrality of Africa and Africanness, and so we're at a point now whereby we have to be clarifying for brothers and sisters like our two brother and sister from the United States who are in the midst of a whole organization of people that are telling them that there's no political viability in the identity of African. We must absorb ourselves and affirm our Americanness and our American citizenry, right? And all this ADOS. Basically, yes, right?
ADOS and FBA.
I listened to your conversation with Brother Omawale and Sister Jam, and it was amazing. There are so much parts from that.
Give thanks. You know what I'm saying? But in the conversation, that similar question was asked, and what's funny is that another brother that I wanted on that particular panel is Brother Abiola Sow from France, from Nation Kamit, and he was unable to. Why? Because he's in Congo building his organization on the ground, right? Nation Kamit has branches in France, in Congo, and in Côte d'Ivoire, I believe it is, and so he's there doing the work, and they're building a hair salon, right? You know what I'm saying? He informed me, but his program is, listen, we're building a hair salon to engage, to build an institution, a service for our people, through which we serve, and through the service of our people, we'll politicize, you know what I'm saying, and them kind of things there. And so we demonstrate it through the institutions that we build, and our people are going to interact with us, not just through when we are preaching them on the road or in a Pan-African meeting, or when, one of us gets a profile on Good Morning Britain or the Big Question on Sunday, but through the fact that they see us in the community. And I think that is what's going to do it. And that's necessary on both sides of the equation, because just the desire to bond on Babylon does not mean that you'll organize it.
Come on.
You know what I'm saying? Like the desire to lick down a statue, and bomb up a building, doesn't mean that you're engaged in the work that it's going to take to build after we destroy. Right, just what I'm saying. And so I think the institution building processes, is what is going to give us the wherewithal to do that, and all these things. So I hope that answers that first question. The second one was about Kwesi Pra. Now that is a good question, and in a sense, right, because the work is so specialized and it's going to take a certain level of development. I don't know if there's much we can practically do. What I try to do is just raise the profile of the fact that the work is being done. Yes, give the Baba as much profile as possible, make people know him name. Do you know what I'm saying? And hopefully that when it's got to a certain point, then we can know more in terms of how we can replicate the program wherever we are, if that makes sense. It's just what I'm saying. But I feel like it's such fantastic work that very few people know about, even in the Pan-African community. So that for me, it begins with raising the profile of the work itself.
Give thanks. Just to quickly say, if you can send any of the information in the chat or just again highlight the name, I'll amplify that on Galaxy as well. And again, to highlight the Galaxy family, Sister Shanice, I see.
Most definitely.
And part of a Rapid Africa plan as well, which is with some brothers and sisters from the continent who are about reconstructing Africa. So I won't go into that. Obviously, there's others that want to speak.
Yeah, man. I look forward to hearing more about that still.
I'll speak about it more on Tuesday. We've got the show on Tuesdays 10 to 1, so we'll try and capture it there. Give thanks, and glad to have you on Galaxy as well. Love hearing your
give thanks, my brother. Give thanks.
Give thanks.
Give thanks. Right. Let me just see, before I bring in Brother Gordon, they want to see if there's any more questions. We are looking to close up. When I have Brother Leader do a formal close, but are there any more questions or comments before I go to Brother Gordon? If not, he will be the final question for this evening as we move into the night time.
Yes, I just wanted to acknowledge, I have acknowledged the family more generally, but I do want to acknowledge Sister Kai and the other Sister Queens, actually, because I think that, and I have never said this to you, Sister Shanice, but I do watch your show. I try my best to stay informed, and a brainwashing station seems to be the place to go. So
thank you so much.
Yeah, those interviews are very, very on point. But the other Sister Queens, I don't think I've met all of them. Sister Amatai, it's good to see you. Sister Queen Hillary. I've greeted Sister Queen Jendai privately as well, but just want to acknowledge the Sister Queens because we are beavering away. Often our names are not called, but we are beavering away. And whenever I see the Queen Mothers in the house, I feel encouraged, because if we don't have the balance, we may have success, but we will be lopsided. So I wanted to just greet the Queen Mothers and the Sister Queens. Peace.
Give thanks for that. Okay, we give thanks for that. I didn't see any responses, so we're going to go over to Brother Gordon. Hello, Brother Gordon.
Tandamari, everyone.
Tandamari.
Right. First, I'd like to give rise to Brother Leader Mbandaka and the Akibulan Revivalist movement, and also for bringing up such a talented young warrior as Shakura. Your presentation, was so factual, a lot to take in and inspiring. So my first question was, is your presentation available in any format or so? Because there was a lot of things to take away and to actually share to our community. Especially the bit about Brother Sebo, who was the godfather of the UK, or
Obi Egbuna, the father of UK Black Power. You're talking?
Yeah. Especially
sorry. Achiaba Adaya Sebo. Sorry, you mean of Black History Month, the father of Black History Month UK?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, especially revealing about the child that called Marcus. And about wanting to be white and that. So that's because we had a similar circumstance like that in our Saturday school. So that's still, that was what, 30 years ago, is still relevant today. As regards to the contribution by Sister Dr. Richards, it's good to see her again. The taking down the statues. I remember in Guyana in 1970, Guyana became a republic because it's going along the nationalist route with all the contradictions. But we were very proud of our African ancestry, because the republic was based on our 1763, the anniversary of 1763 Barbary slave revolt, which took over that area of Guyana for about a year and a half till they sent reinforcements. But anyway, what I'm saying is that there was a statue of Queen Victoria in the law courts in Guyana, and during that time, it was taken down. Even my dad was involved in the physical removal of it, and they put it way behind the botanical gardens. But my advice is that if these statues needs to be destroyed, crushed, or something, because when a subsequent government came in, right, they re-erected it. So I'm just saying, be careful about these statues, because unless you get rid of them properly, you know, another consciousness can raise them again. The other thing I wanted to say was, right, the other thing, I think you touched on it, that even right now, the whole Black history thing right now, what they call Black history in Britain, is about trying to prove how Black people have a right to be here. You know, they're stressing this Blackness because they're going back to history about individuals that contributed to the monarchy and to, you know, the whole white power structure. So how do we really fight that in, from going into the curriculum? Because and a lot of our African people are taking it and running with it. Yeah, so how do we really counter that? So yeah, that's my question. So that question, and also, is the presentation available? I don't know if that's a cheeky
Don't worry. So the presentation is available, and is available on Got Kush. I did a 4-part of it, but this today's version of it is actually better. So I'm not sure what we're going to be doing with it, but I'm sure it can be made available at some point. And by the way, I am a co-director. Yeah, I'm not the CEO of Got Kush TV. I keep meaning to correct that, but I am a co-director because there are other directors. So I don't want to. I want to honor the other brothers and sisters who are involved as well. So yeah, but that 4-part is on Got Kush at the moment, so it can be watched there. And yeah, I'm sure Uncle Tunji will let us know what we're going to be doing with this one, because it is being recorded at some point soon.
Yeah.
In relation to I've lost the question now.
The Blackness, wanted to be Black British.
Yeah.
More than being African. Using history to prove that we're Black British.
Yes.
We right to be in this little island here.
Do you know what? We are privileged in the UK to have possibly the globe's currently #1 Black historian.
Yes.
And I'm not
absolutely
exaggerating, right? I'm not over exaggerating, yeah.
Absolutely.
Hold on there, 1 second. Yeah, I ain't write the book. Yeah, when we ruled. Yeah?
Absolutely.
Right? And that one too. Yeah. But not only is he writing, he's also teaching. Yeah. And he's teaching for the express purpose. I've done his course, levels 1, 2, and 3, where I didn't quite complete 3 because Pitney did barn, and you know, but the 1, 2, and 3, yeah, for the express purpose of developing scholars. Yeah. So in other words, what I'm saying is that, one, we have to promote the work of our teachers and scholars in our community to raise the impact of their work and their perspective. And 2, more of us have to actually do some courses. Yeah, right. You know what I'm saying? Like, and encourage our children. For example, you can do his level 1 for free. Yeah. Every African child, when they complete school or college, should go and do the 12-week, is it 12 weeks or 30-something weeks? Yeah. Of his course. Yeah. So for me, I think it begins with, there are many people in our community, in our world community, it's not just Robin Walker, but it begins with centralizing the work of our scholars and the perspective that comes from our scholars. That's where it begins. And then institutionalize it in the Saturday schools and the homeschoolers networks and the future full-time schools and them kind of things there. Yeah, I think that is it. Also, there are some good resources online nowadays. One of them, which is very good, is a brother has a channel called Home Team History, yeah, where he does like quick on YouTube. He does like quick 10-15 minute videos on African history. Excellent resource, yeah, excellent resource. and he does it from an African centered perspective as well. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And
or US is that?
He's from the US. He's the brother's from the US. Yeah. And there are a few channels like his, but his is one of the best and the most consistent as well. Yeah. And he also, if you sign up to him like on his Patreon account, he will provide you with the resources that go into his presentations and them kind of things. There, it's an excellent resource. Home team, history. Yeah. So I know there are people like Andrew Muhammad who are doing a very good job of infiltrating the mainstream education system. The reality is that's where most of our children are. Do you know what I'm saying? And more of us need to be doing that work. But ultimately, it's going to take for us to really be teaching them on our own terms in our own institutions, in my humble opinion. Having said that, though, and I can hear my teacher, Robin Walker, in my ears right about now, we cannot just focus on the youths them. Yeah? Because as far as he's concerned, many people focus on the youths them in order to abdicate responsibility, yes, on the adults them, yeah. So he tends to focus on adult education in a lot of respects for that express purpose, yeah. And so I hope that that answers it. And yes, brother Nat has kindly put the details of where you can do Robin Walker's course in the chat, yeah. So those details are there. Thank you for that, brother Nat. Much appreciated. Have I missed a question there? That was it.
Okay. Yeah, that was it. Thank you.
Good facts.
And I'm Mari. Brother Olatunji, if I may just chip in here. This brother Gordon might find this helpful. I don't know. Is that okay, brother Olatunji?
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
Yeah. Brother Gordon, I don't know if you might have a copy of Whirlwind. I'm sure you remember the Whirlwind newspaper, Brother Gordon.
Which one?
Whirlwind 3.
Whirlwind 3. Okay.
Yes. With a David Banda article as the lead article. We have a center page spread. The battle for the soul of Black History Month. Yeah. Information regarding Baba Achebo Adaya Sebo.
Do you have a back copy? A back copy that you can make available?
We can check. Brother Olatunji might be best placed to say whether we do or not.
Yeah.
But you might find
I need to check.
You might find that you have a copy, because I know you used to buy the Whirlwind.
Yeah.
You know,
it's quite some time ago, though. So.
Yeah. So just in case, you might be able to find it somewhere, my brother. That information is there in the center page.
And I'll certainly check the archives.
Yeah.
Can I just add one more thing to this? Yeah. In closing, yeah, because I was minded by this business about getting rid of the Queen of England as the head of state, yeah, and the very real thing of the fact that our governments, yeah, that are still part of the Commonwealth and have a Governor General. The Governor General represents the highest authority in the land over the Prime Minister, yes, of said nations. And we mentioned the name of Baba Maurice Bishop. Yeah, earlier. And one of the major contradictions is that the American army invaded the nation after the assassination of Maurice Bishop and 7 others, yeah, including his pregnant partner, yes. And the governments of the Caribbean stood by and watched, yeah, in concert with their politics, but partly because also they're unable to deploy army anywhere in the world without the consent of the Governor General, who acts on the authority of the Queen of England. And no free people would facilitate a situation. Imagine that England had to consult with Germany. They're vexed about something called economic deals. But they would never facilitate a situation in which they had a highest authority that was German, and they had to seek some permission.
But the Queen is.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Yeah, but I mean operating with the authority of Germany. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? In that respect, yeah, you know what I'm saying? And so it's a major contradiction. It's also a major contradiction because I'm not sure it's even viable if we have not repaired the damage done by that colonial process for us to seek reparations. Yeah, how can we seek reparations while we maintain her, yes, as the head of state of our nations? It's a position of subordination, weakness, and sanctioning of the very thing that we say we're claiming reparations from. Yeah, so it's a fundamental contradiction that must be corrected, and I do hope our governments in Africa and the Caribbean see fit to follow suit in the not too distant future.
Right. Give thanks for that, Shakura. Right, we're going to come to our close, but before I bring in the spiritual leader of the Al-Keblan Bibalist movement, Brother Leader Bandaka, just want to say this is part of the Al-Keblan Academy of Excellence Black History Month program. As I mentioned earlier, we had Sister Amitai Lumumba today earlier deliver the presentation, The History of Black History Month for Children. We've got this session now. Our next session is planned to be in this Wednesday, the 14th, in conjunction with Neat Sports on racism in sports. I'll just go on to next Imani Day, between 1 and 2 next Imani Day, again live online, ringing, storytelling and ring game from Africa and the Caribbean. Sister Dr. Sandra Richards, hail up Sister Kai. She'll be leading that session along with Siba Anwar Popo Heru. The last thing I'm going to say for now, sisters and brothers, is next Imani Day in the evening, 6 p.m. UK time. If I can find my screen share, so it is. We're gonna have joining us all the way from the US of A, Sister Nikiti Taifa. Now she's a warrior, scholar, lawyer, activist, reparations lawyer, but she's also known for writing some brilliant children's books. One called The Shining Legacy, one called The Adventures of Kojo and Amma. So we're going to be dealing with creating superheroes, writing revolutionary books for children, for Black children. That's going to be next Saturday, 6 p.m. right here, sisters and brothers, Sister Nikiti Taifa. So you don't want to miss that. If those of you who have a copy of her books, Shining Legacy has been out of print for several years. She says she's bringing it back. Please tune into that, sisters and brothers, because again, we spoke earlier about healing up the Watotos, healing up our children. Spoke about Shakura being born on Liberation Road. If we're going to bring our children along this road to africate them, to conscientize them, they need resources. And some of the books written by the likes of Sister Nikichi are instrumental in that, for sisters and brothers. Not quite yet, but from tomorrow, go to alkeblan.org for all the details of our program, which is coming up for this month. Sisters and brothers, it's here for you. On that note, let me hand over to our spiritual leader, Brother Leader Bandaka, for some closing words and to take us out for this evening. Brother Leader. Brother Leader.
Your mic is on, Brother Leader. Sorry, your mic is off.
Let me see if I can help.
Tendai
Mwari.
Okay, I hope everyone can hear me now.
Yes.
Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. As always, we are deeply inspired and thankful unto Mwari Nyakusika, God, the creator of the universe, through Mudima Mukuru, for blessing us with the moments that we have spent together this evening, and for so richly blessing our beloved young king, our son, our brother Shakura, to bring us a message of such depth and such power. I hope we all feel suitably uplifted and empowered by the message that we have received this evening. I'm gonna invite us all to just put our hands and hearts together again and to hail our young king for that sumptuous, powerful, awesome, outstanding and brilliant rendition of the history of Black History Month. Can we hear them, please, brothers and sisters, once more? Hear them? And also to the organizers of this evening, Sister Amitai, who led the way. Can we hear her, please? Tendai Mwari, Hilar. Brother Olatunji, doing the technical stuff, and Sister Kai, Sister Anwar. Those were the main people who got their heads together and mastermind how Al-Keblan will deliver its Black History Month program this year. Can we hear them, please? Hear them, please, brothers and sisters. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari.
To our Watoto, who had their session this morning, and who turned out in their numbers, and who were firing. They were very, very inspiring, brothers and sisters, to see our princes and princesses just drinking from the fountain of Sister Amitai, as you know, a wealth of knowledge in our community. It was really, really a sight to behold. It was a powerful afternoon, a powerful 1 hour. That 1 hour was, you know, like a hundred years in terms of its power, in terms of its awesomeness. It just felt so good. And so can we hear Sister Amitai and the Watoto for the session this afternoon? Hear them. Hear them. Tendai Mwari.
Mwari.
Beloved brothers and sisters, just to crown the outstanding message and the directions that we were given by our young brother this evening, let me evoke the spirit of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who we know has a word, a profound word for every occasion and every eventuality. And in the book Philosophy and Opinion of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, or Marcus Garvey, the first quotation is on history. Papa Garvey tells us that history is the landmark by which we are directed into the true course of life. The history of a movement, the history of a nation, the history of a race is the guidepost of that movement's destiny, that nation's destiny, that race's destiny. What you do today that is worthwhile inspires others to act at some future time. So we can see, brothers and sisters, in these few words of the most eminent prophet and king, the essence of the message that we received from Brother Shakura this evening, the foundation to that message, or the centrality of that message, was that history was not a study of static events of the past, but that history in the African-centered sense is three-dimensional. It is past, it is present, it is continuous. In the Al-Kebalan revivalist movement, we use a definition. History is the collective memory bank of a people. The collective memory bank of a people. It is how a people collectively store information and how we collectively tap that information and use it to analyze our present and to shape our future. We also say history is a record of progressive events of the past, leading to the present and projecting towards the future. So the real essence of history is how we organize the data, how we organize the information in order to command our present and then mastermind how we are going to move into the future. And that's what I hope that we're going to leave here with this evening. That quest to use our history, to commandeer our history, and to utilize history in the way that we ought to. History is not designed for us to just glorify the past for the sake of glorifying the past and for the sake of us stroking our ego or enjoying a feel-good factor. It gives us all of that. It is supposed to inspire us. It is supposed to raise our self-esteem, but it must not do that just for the sake of vanity. It must do that for the sake of commanding the present and masterminding how we are going to move into the future. So as we close out this evening, the first of the Al-Kebalan revivalist movements contribution to Black History Month in this year, 6260. I didn't say 2020. I said 6260 based on our ancient African calendar. Let us pray that we are going to grow in that quest to use the knowledge that we have of our past to empower us in the present, to transform the present so that more and more what we do in the present is gaining advantage for us as a people. I hope we heard when Brother Shakura, our young brother, emphasized the need for organization, emphasized the need for nation building. I say it again, nation building, because we in the Alkebulan Revivalist movement are moved by and convicted by the wisdom of Baba John Henry Clark when he admonishes us that whatever we do in the name of liberation, if it does not include nation building, then we are wasting our time. See, once we command the concept, the understanding of the concept and the principles, the indispensable principles of nation building, which is, Papa Garvey says, is the highest ideal for us to strive for. Once we understand that, then the whole concept or the need for economics will fit into place. The need for culture will fit into place. The need for education will fit into place. The need for health care and controlling our health care will fit into place. The need, beloved brothers and sisters, for us to be able to secure and defend our spaces will fit into place. And therefore, the understanding of the need for us to build institutions will all fit into place, because education, economics, culture, science and technological development all occurs within the context of nation building. And it's when we have the value for nationhood that we will truly develop the quest for building the institutions that will provide the component parts of the scaffolding for nation building and sustaining nationhood. So let us understand that this is the essence of the message. When it comes to us within the Alkebulan revivalist movement, we seek to inspire our people to do. Not just to think, but to do. With what we think, with what we know, let us do great things. Let us do outstanding things, brothers and sisters. As Papa Garvey says, the world today is indebted to us for the benefit of civilization. He says also, be as proud of your race today as our fathers and mothers were in the days of yore. Y-O-R-E, not Y-O-U-R. No, is that right? Y-O-U-R. Y-O-R-E, in the days of ancient times. He says we have a beautiful history. We have a beautiful history. But we can create another in the future that will astonish the world. So don't just glorify what we've done. We're still making history. But what kind of history are we making? He says we can create another in the future that will astonish the world. The future begins in the moment we occupy, in the moment we assume. That's where the future begins in the present, because everything we do today affects what we reap, or determines what we reap tomorrow. Finally, brothers and sisters, we will win or we will lose our fight for liberation through our children and our young people. We will win or we will lose the fight for our liberation through our children and our young people. They are, therefore, our most precious resources. We must build the institutions that will ensure that we will capture the minds of our young people and shape those minds, because those are the minds and the hearts and the souls that are going to deliver liberation to our people. I close, as I always do, in the words of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency. Let me thank you all for joining us this evening. We feel so honored, we feel so blessed to have all of you gathered with us this evening. I hope we will see you throughout the month and you will encourage others to tune in, because we have some outstanding messages, some outstanding programs to deliver throughout Black History Month. So let me close with the words of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Unite, organize now or perish. Rise, you mighty African people, for you can accomplish whatever you will. Rumbid Sokuna Mwari Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari.
Sisters and brothers, give thanks for being with us this evening. We're going to call it an evening there. And please tune into galaxyafriwi.com for more information. And you've had some of the pilots on this evening. Sister Shanice, Brother Natnara, please tune in, www.galaxyafriwi.com. And for more information, go to alkebalan.org, sisters and brothers. Our next event will be on Wednesday evening with Neek Sports about racism in sport. Give thanks, sisters and brothers. Enjoy the rest of your end of Sabbath, your evening, and we bid you farewell and good night. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari.